You know, sometimes late at night when the world gets quiet, I find myself thinking about what really happens when this life comes to an end. Maybe you felt that too, the soft ache of wondering where we go, what happens when the breath stops, when the body finally lets go. It's not something we talk about much, maybe because it feels too heavy. But here's the truth. Death doesn't have to be scary. It can be a doorway, not a wall. So before we go further, if you find peace in talks like this, gentle reflections about life, death, and what it all means, feel free to subscribe and stay close. We're just two people thinking together tonight, and I promise this space will always be calm, real, and honest. In Buddhism, death isn't the end of the story. It's more like the sunset before another dawn. The Buddha compared life to a flowing river. It never stops, never stays the same, but also doesn't disappear. Every drop keeps moving, transforming. He said that everything around us changes. Our bodies, our possessions, our emotions, even the people we love. It's all temporary. And maybe that sounds sad, but it's not meant to be, because when you see that everything changes, you realize you don't have to hold on so tight. You don't have to fight what's already part of life. When I first heard that teaching, it felt like someone gently took a weight off my chest. I used to be afraid of losing people. I wanted everything to stay the same forever. But life doesn't work that way, right? A friend moves away. Someone you love passes on. You wake up one morning and realize you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we're not supposed to hold things forever. Maybe love isn't about keeping. It's about letting it flow through us, knowing that every moment is precious because it doesn't last. The Buddha said there's no unchanging self inside us, no little soul sitting somewhere waiting to fly away. We're more like a song made of many notes. The notes come and go, but the melody, this beautiful, moving energy, keeps playing. When we understand that, the fear starts to fade, because death doesn't take away who we are. It just changes a tune. It's like the ocean wave returning to the sea. Nothing is truly lost. I once knew a woman named Ellen, a kind, quiet lady in her 70s. She lost her husband after 50 years of marriage. For months, she said she felt like half of herself was gone. One evening, she sat by the lake near her house and just whispered, "If you're still here, show me." The wind picked up a bit, the water rippled. And she said it wasn't magic. It was just this soft knowing that he was never really gone. He's in everything, she told me. In the way I laugh, in the stories I tell, in the silence of this lake. And somehow, she smiled again. That's what Buddhism calls impermanence. But to me, it's just love continuing in a different form. Maybe that's what death really is. A moment when the form changes, not the love, not the energy, not the story. The leaf falls, but the tree still grows. The sun sets, but we trust it'll rise again. When we remember that, we can start to live differently. We don't waste as much time holding grudges or chasing things that don't last. We say, "I love you" more often. We forgive faster. We live lighter. And that's why, in Buddhist thought, understanding death isn't about sadness. It's about living more fully right now. The Buddha said, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Simple words, but they hold everything. Because if we stay here, right here, this moment becomes enough. So maybe tonight, as you listen to this, you can take a slow breath and let the thought of death soften you, not scare you. Let it remind you that everything you love, every smile, every sunset, it's all temporary. But that's what makes it beautiful. Life is a moving song, And death is just a pause between notes before the melody begins again. If this kind of quiet talk brings you peace, you're welcome to stay, hit subscribe, join me next time, and we'll keep walking through these gentle questions together, not to find perfect answers, but just to see the beauty in the mystery, because maybe, just maybe, that's where peace really lives. You know, when we talk about what happens after death, we often imagine a clear line. This life ends, and something else begins. But in the Buddhist way of seeing, there's no sharp border, no sudden stop. It's more like the flame of one candle lighting another. The fire continues, even though the candle changes. That's what rebirth is. A gentle continuation, not a repeat, not a punishment, just a natural unfolding. Maybe that sounds hard to believe at first. We tend to think of ourselves as one single, solid person, living one single life. But when you really sit quietly, maybe early in the morning before the world wakes up, you can feel how everything is already flowing through you. You're not the same person you were yesterday. Your thoughts shift, your body changes, your memories fade and form new ones. Life is happening, even when you're not trying. And that's what rebirth really means. It's this endless movement, the universe recycling itself through love, loss, and learning. The Buddha said our lives are shaped by karma, not as a rule book, but as a reflection. Every thought, every word, every action sends ripples through the world. Sometimes those ripples return to us in ways we can't predict. Karma isn't a judge. It's more like gravity. It doesn't punish or reward. It simply responds. If you plant seeds of kindness, peace will grow. If you plant anger, suffering will bloom. It's simple, natural, quiet. I once met an old monk in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He was sitting by a small stream, just watching the water slide over the rocks. He said, "People think karma is something waiting to catch them, but really, it's just the water finding its level." Then he smiled and added, "So be the stream that flows gently." I never forgot that, because maybe that's the whole point, not to fear what comes after, but to live in a way that when this body ends, the energy that continues carries light, not sorrow. Rebirth, then, isn't some distant myth. You can see it everywhere. The tree dies, and new grass grows from its soil. A mother passes, but her kindness echoes through her children's laughter. Even within one life, we are reborn countless times. Every time you let go of anger, every time you forgive, every time you begin again after falling, that's a kind of rebirth too. It's the heart learning to breathe again. Maybe that's what makes Buddhism feel so comforting. It doesn't ask you to believe blindly. It invites you to look, to see for yourself. You don't have to wait until death to understand rebirth. You can feel it every time you wake up after a hard night, every time your heart heals a little more than yesterday. So when we think about what happens after this life, maybe we don't need to imagine distant heavens or hells. Maybe heaven is what blooms when we live kindly, and hell is what grows when we live in hate. The Buddha once said, "The mind creates the world." That means heaven and hell aren't far away. They're here, inside every choice, every breath. And maybe that's where peace begins, not in chasing something after death, but in caring for this life now, in smiling at the stranger who looks tired, in forgiving the friend who hurt you, in whispering to yourself, "It's okay, I can begin again." Because when your heart becomes softer, when your days become gentler, then wherever this journey goes next, it will carry your peace with it. So as we close this part, just take a slow breath. Feel the air moving in and out. That's life being renewed right there in your chest. That's rebirth, not far away, not after you die, but here, in this very moment. And if these quiet reflections make your heart a little lighter, you can stay close. Subscribe, join me again, and together we'll keep walking through these quiet mysteries of life and death, not to explain them away, but to feel them deeply, because maybe that's all we really need, to keep our hearts open as we move through the endless rhythm of beginnings and endings again and again. You know, the more I sit with these thoughts about life and death, the more I see that everything really comes down to one thing: letting go. We spend so much of our lives trying to hold on to people, to memories, to dreams we thought would last forever. We cling to what we think should stay, and when it slips away, as everything eventually does, we ache. Maybe that's just part of being human. But the Buddha once said that the root of suffering is attachment, not because love is wrong, but because we try to freeze what was never meant to stop moving. I remember watching the ocean one afternoon. The tide was coming in, and I saw a little child trying to hold a handful of sand, pressing it tight so it wouldn't fall. But the tighter he squeezed, the faster the sand slipped through his fingers. And I thought, that's all of us, isn't it? We hold so tightly to what we love, thinking that's how we'll keep it. But in truth, love stays longer when we hold it gently. Maybe that's what letting go really means. Not forgetting, not walking away, but loosening our grip just enough so that life can breathe again. Buddhism doesn't ask us to be detached in a cold way. It teaches a softer kind of freedom, a heart that loves deeply but doesn't demand forever. When someone we care for passes, we grieve. Of course we do. But slowly, we learn to see that their presence didn't vanish. It changed. They return in the wind, in the smell of rain, in a song that makes us smile for no reason. And when that moment comes, it's not sadness anymore, it's gratitude. Letting go also means forgiving ourselves. We've all made choices we wish we could rewrite, words we can't take back, moments when we turn away instead of reaching out. But life is kind if you let it be. Every breath is a new beginning. Maybe you can whisper to yourself right now, it's okay. I did what I knew how to do at that time. And that's enough. You can start again right here, right now. The Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Isn't that beautiful? We forget that sometimes. We care so deeply for others, but treat ourselves like we're not worth the same softness. But peace starts right there, with kindness toward yourself. When you stop fighting your past, you make space for the present to heal you. And here's something I've come to realize. Letting go isn't a single moment. It's a practice. Some days you'll feel light, free, unburdened. Other days, the old memories will come knocking again. And that's all right. Healing isn't straight. It moves in circles. You don't fail by missing someone. You don't fail by feeling sad. You just keep walking gently through it, one breath at a time. Maybe death is the universe's way of reminding us to live lighter, to say, I love you while we can, to forgive before it's too late, to stop waiting for perfect days and start noticing the small ones, the way morning light hits your window, the sound of a bird outside, the warmth of tea between your palms. Because those moments, the quiet ones, that's where peace hides. So tonight, if your heart feels heavy, maybe you can place your hand over it and say, it's okay to let go. It's okay to feel. It's okay to start again. The truth is, we never really lose anything. We just keep transforming, just like the river, just like the flame passing from one candle to another. And if these soft talks touch something inside you, stay with me. Subscribe. Come back for the next moment we share. Not because we'll find all the answers, but because it's comforting to walk together through the questions. Because maybe peace isn't something we find. It's something we remember when we finally let go. Sometimes, when people hear the word rebirth, they imagine it happens instantly, that one life ends and another begins right away. But the Buddhist view is a little gentler, a little quieter than that. It says there's a moment in between, a space that isn't life and isn't death. It's like the stillness between two heartbeats, or the silence after one song ends and before the next begins. That space is called Bardo in Tibetan teachings, a place of transition where the soul, or rather the flow of consciousness, drifts like a feather in the wind, waiting for the next place to rest. I used to think of that space as lonely. The thought of floating between worlds made me uneasy, like being caught in a dream you can't wake from. But the more I listened to the old teachings, the more I began to feel something peaceful about it. They say that in the Bardo, everything you've carried inside, your fears, your kindness, your love, unfolds before you, like reflections on still water. It's not a punishment. It's a mirror. You see yourself clearly without the distractions of a body or a name. You see what mattered and what didn't. And maybe that's why Buddhists say that how we live now shapes what comes after, because the mind you leave this world with is the mind you carry forward. There's a story about a monk who was asked what it's like to die. He smiled and said, "It's like taking off a tight shoe." I've always loved that. Maybe that's what death feels like. Just relief, release, ease. Maybe the Bardo isn't something to fear at all, but a pause filled with understanding, a space to rest before beginning again. And maybe, just maybe, you felt a little bit of that space even now, in moments of deep stillness, when everything inside you goes quiet and there's no rush, no fear, no thought of before or after. Maybe that's a glimpse of what it feels like between lives, the still center of all that moves. When we think of rebirth, we often imagine returning as someone new in some faraway time or place. But the heart of this teaching is much closer. Every night we fall asleep, and every morning we awaken. Every time we forgive, we are reborn. Every time we let an old wound close, that's a small Bardo, a moment of transition. So maybe we don't have to wait until death to taste it. Maybe it's already happening, quietly every day. The Buddha once said that the present moment is all we ever really have. Life and death, past and future, they all exist inside this breath. So when you breathe gently, with awareness, you're already touching eternity. That's why meditation, or even just sitting quietly, is so powerful. It lets you feel that still space inside you, that quiet in between where nothing is missing and nothing needs to be added. I know this can sound mysterious, even strange, but maybe it's not meant to be understood like a fact. Maybe it's something you feel. When someone you love passes and you sense them near for just a moment, like a warmth, a whisper, a memory that feels more alive than memories should, that's the mystery of the in-between. It's not something we can prove. It's something the heart just recognizes. And maybe that's what all of this really means. Life, death, and everything in between, they're not separate at all. They're part of one great rhythm, like waves rising and falling on the same ocean. And when we finally see that, we stop fearing the fall. We learn to trust the water. So as we end this part, I want to invite you to take one deep breath. Feel it come in and go out. That space between the two, that's your own Bardo, your own pause between one moment and the next. You don't have to reach for peace. It's already there, waiting in the stillness. If these quiet reflections touch something in you, stay close, subscribe, and we'll keep walking through this journey together. Because maybe what we're really doing here isn't learning about death at all. Maybe we're remembering how to live. You know, when people hear the word karma, They often imagine like a scorekeeper, something that waits in the shadows, ready to give rewards or punishments. But that's not really how it works. Karma isn't a cosmic judge. It's more like the echo of your own voice. Whatever you send out into the world, your thoughts, your words, your actions, comes back to you, not because someone decides it, but because everything is connected. It's like planting seeds. You don't yell at the soil to grow flowers. You just plant what you hope to see again someday. In the Buddhist way, karma is gentle, not scary. It reminds us that nothing we do ever disappears. Every kind gesture, every moment of patience, every smile you give someone who needed it, it all matters. It all leaves a mark, not on the outside world alone, but inside your own heart. Maybe you've noticed that too. When you do something kind, it feels like your chest opens a little wider, like your breath gets easier. That's karma already blooming. There's a story about a man who came to the Buddha angry, shouting that life was unfair. Why do bad things happen to good people? He asked. The Buddha didn't argue. He simply picked up a handful of soil and said, if a seed is planted in good earth, watered with care, it will grow. But if the ground is rocky, even a strong seed will struggle. The man frowned, not quite understanding. And the Buddha said softly, your past actions are soil. Your present choices are the water. Your future depends on both. Maybe that's the simplest way to see it. Karma isn't punishment, it's education. Life is teaching us through experience. If you keep touching fire, eventually you learn it burns. If you keep choosing compassion, eventually peace becomes your second nature. Every joy, every pain, every chance to begin again, it's all part of the learning. I used to think karma was something far away, something I'd only understand in another lifetime. But now, I see it in the smallest moments. When I rush through my day, irritated and impatient, the world feels harder. But when I slow down, smile, and choose to be kind, even when no one notices, the world feels softer, almost lighter. That's karma, not in the mystical sense, but in the very real way our choices shape how we experience life. And maybe you felt this too. You help someone, and somehow the day just flows better. You hurt someone, even by accident, and something inside you tightens until you make it right. That's the quiet language of cause and effect. The universe doesn't punish you. It just mirrors you. The Buddha said, hate never ceases by hate, but only by love. It's one of those truths that sound simple, but take a lifetime to live. When we choose love, even when it's hard, we change the cycle. We stop passing our pain forward. And that's the real beauty of karma. It gives us a choice. No matter what came before, you can begin again right now. You can plant a different seed. So if you're carrying something heavy today, regret, guilt, anger, it's okay. You don't have to fix it all at once. Just take one small action that brings kindness back into your world. It can be as small as a gentle word, a breath of patience, a moment of honesty with yourself. That's how the cycle shifts. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet ones. Karma isn't fate. It's freedom. Because once you understand it, you realize the power to change your story was always in your hands. Every day, every breath is another chance to write a softer ending. And maybe that's what life is really offering us. Not certainty, not control, but opportunity. A chance to grow something good, to water it with care, to watch it bloom not just in this lifetime, but in whatever comes next. So as you listen to this, maybe take a moment to forgive yourself for the things you wish you'd done differently. Let that forgiveness be the seed of peace. And if you want to keep walking through these quiet reflections together, you can subscribe and stay close. Because we're not chasing perfection here. We're just learning how to live with a gentler heart, one moment, one choice, one breath at a time. You know, sometimes I think the most peaceful people aren't the ones who have everything figured out. They're the ones who've learned to let go. They don't hold too tightly to what's gone, and they don't chase too desperately after what hasn't come yet. They just breathe. They let life move through them like wind through an open field. Maybe that's what the Buddha really meant when he spoke about freedom. Not some distant enlightenment, but this quiet, soft surrender to the truth that everything changes. Death in this light isn't something dark or cruel. It's a continuation, like the tide pulling back so the ocean can breathe again. It's not the end of the song, just a pause before the next note. In the teachings, they say that everything that arises must pass away, but that passing is not a loss. It's an invitation to see how deeply connected everything really is. When we let go of clinging, what remains is love. Not the kind of love that needs to own or last forever, but the kind that simply is. I remember sitting once with an old woman who was dying. She wasn't afraid. She just smiled and said, "I've spent my whole life trying to hold on, and now I finally understand that everything I was holding was just passing through." There was no sadness in her voice, only peace. She had learned the art of letting go, not by giving up, but by opening up. Maybe that's the secret. We don't have to hold the moment. We just have to be held by it. You see, impermanence isn't a punishment. It's mercy. Because if everything changed for the worse, it can also change for the better. Every tear you've ever cried will dry. Every wound will heal. Every ending will make space for something new to begin. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel lost. But don't forget, this too will pass. Always. When we understand that, we stop fighting life. We stop blaming. Stop wishing things were different. We begin to trust that the flow knows where it's going. And in that trust, there's peace. Not the loud kind that comes with achievement or success, but the quiet kind that comes when your heart whispers, "It's okay. I can let this be." And maybe that's what death really is, a return to that peace. Not a punishment, not an ending, just a final exhale after a long, beautiful breath. When you see it that way, it doesn't feel so scary anymore. It feels natural, like coming home after a long journey. So, tonight, maybe take a moment to look around your life. Notice what you're still holding on to, old regrets, unspoken words, fears that keep you awake. And then, just for a breath, imagine what it would feel like to let them drift away. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to understand everything. You just have to let life breathe through you. And if these words bring you even a small sense of peace, stay a little longer. Subscribe, not just to the channel, but to this way of being, to the soft acceptance that nothing is really lost. It just changes shape. We're all walking the same path, learning, stumbling, and slowly remembering how to let go. Because maybe when we finally do, we won't fall, we'll float. There's a silence that comes when you really start to understand how fragile life is. It's not a sad silence. It's something deeper, like a calm lake at dawn. You begin to see that every moment is a gift, every breath a small miracle. Maybe that's why the Buddha always reminded people to live with awareness. Because when you truly see that everything changes, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop fighting the flow of life. You begin to live softly, but fully. Sometimes I think about how much we rush through life, chasing plans, chasing people, chasing happiness, like we're afraid of standing still. But if you've ever lost someone, you know the truth. It all passes too quickly. One day you're laughing with someone, And the next day, it's only their memory that keeps you company. But that memory, that warmth you feel when you think of them, that's not gone. It's just moved somewhere quieter, somewhere deeper. Maybe that's what continues after death. The love, the kindness, the intention we leave behind. There was once a story I heard about a man who asked a monk, "Where do we go after we die?" The monk smiled and said, "Where does the flame go when the candle goes out?" The man thought about it, confused. The monk continued, "The flame doesn't disappear. It becomes part of everything else." That image has never left me. Maybe that's how consciousness works. Maybe when we die, we don't vanish. We dissolve, becoming the light that warms someone else's morning, the breeze that brushes their face, the whisper that reminds them to keep going. And isn't that a comforting thought? That maybe when we leave this world, we don't leave at all. We just change our shape like water turning into mist, still here, just unseen. That's why in Buddhism, death isn't feared, it's understood. It's the bridge between what was and what will be, not an end, but a gentle continuation. You don't have to believe in rebirth to feel that truth. You just have to notice how life renews itself every day. The trees lose their leaves, but spring always returns. The night fades and the sun always rises. Even your pain, no matter how deep, softens with time. The universe has a rhythm, a kindness that keeps everything moving, even when we can't see it. So maybe the real lesson isn't to figure out what happens after death. Maybe it's to learn how to live before it, to be kind while we can, to listen when someone speaks, to hold someone's hand when they're scared. Because those moments, those simple acts of love, are what echo beyond the body. They're the ripples that keep moving long after we're gone. And maybe when we finally cross that invisible line, when the body rests and the breath slows, it won't feel like falling. It'll feel like remembering, like waking up from a long dream and realizing we were never really alone. So if you're here listening, maybe take a moment to breathe and feel that truth in your chest. You are part of something vast and kind. You always have been. You always will be. And if these thoughts bring you a little comfort, I'd love for you to stay, subscribe, and walk with me through these reflections. Together we'll keep exploring that space between life and forever, where silence isn't empty and love never really ends. There's something beautiful about letting go, though it rarely feels that way at first. When we lose someone or something we love, our hearts break in quiet ways. The world feels smaller, heavier. But over time, sometimes a long, long time, you begin to realize that letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to hold things differently, softer, without clinging. Maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he spoke about freedom. It wasn't about escaping life. It was about flowing with it, trusting that even loss carries meaning. You see, life never really asks us to stop loving. It just asks us to love with more space, to love without needing to own, without needing forever. When you lose someone, their love doesn't vanish. It lingers in the way you speak, in the way you care for others, in the gentle patience you didn't have before. That's how love transforms. It becomes part of your breath, your kindness, your silence. There's a story I often remember when thinking about letting go. A man asked a monk, "How do I stop feeling pain after losing the people I love?" The monk picked up a cup, filled it with water, and said, "Hold this tightly." The man did, and water spilled everywhere. Then the monk said, "Now hold it gently." The water stayed still. That, the monk whispered, is how you hold your grief. Maybe that's the secret. We don't need to let go in the way we think. We just need to loosen our grip, to stop fighting the tide and let life carry us where it will. It doesn't mean we stop missing them. It means we stop suffering from the missing. It means we begin to see the beauty in what remains. Because when you really look, you'll notice everything is always changing, yet somehow everything stays connected. The same sun that warmed your childhood still shines on you today. The same moon your loved one once looked at still lights your night sky. In that way, nothing's truly lost. It just moves, evolves, continues. Sometimes, late at night, when the world gets quiet, you might feel that ache again, the one that whispers of all you've loved and lost. Don't push it away. Sit with it. Let it breathe beside you, because in that moment, you're touching something sacred. The proof that your heart still feels, still remembers, still loves. And if you let yourself be still long enough, you'll sense it, that soft, almost invisible peace rising underneath the pain. It's the soul's way of telling you, it's okay. You don't need to hold so tight anymore. Love doesn't end here. So maybe letting go isn't a single act. It's a lifelong practice. It's learning to say goodbye with grace, to smile at memories instead of clinging to them. It's finding comfort in knowing that the story goes on, even if you can't see the next page yet. And if these words touch something in you, maybe stay with me a little longer. Subscribe, listen, and let's keep walking this quiet road together. We'll talk about love, loss, peace, and the simple human beauty of it all. Because in the end, we're all just learning how to let go, gently, bravely, with our hearts still open. There's a moment right before dawn when everything feels still. The world hasn't yet woken up, and you can almost hear your own soul breathing. That moment, it feels like coming home. And maybe that's what death really is. Not a punishment, not a mystery to be solved, but a quiet return to something we've always belonged to. When you listen deeply to life, you begin to notice that everything is part of one rhythm. Birth, growth, fading, renewal, like the waves meeting the shore, over and over again. The Buddha once said that nothing truly dies. It only changes form. And when you think about it, you can feel the truth in that. The same earth that held your grandparents now holds you. The same air they breathed fills your lungs. The same love that carried them through their days now moves quietly inside you. Maybe we've never really left home at all. You see, when we think of dying, we often imagine losing everything. Our body, our memories, our name. But what if it's not about losing? What if it's about remembering? Remembering what we really are beneath all the noise, the still, vast awareness that watches it all come and go. The sky doesn't disappear when clouds pass through. It just waits, open and infinite. Maybe our true nature is like that sky, unchanged, untouched, waiting for us to notice. And maybe that's why in those moments of deep peace or love, something inside you whispers, this feels familiar. Because it is. That peace is where you came from and where you'll return. Life is just a journey that helps you remember that truth. Every joy, every heartbreak, every laugh and tear, they're all steps leading you back home. There's a softness that comes when you accept this. The fear begins to fade, replaced by something gentler, a quiet trust. You start to see death not as an ending, but as a doorway, not as darkness, but as a light that doesn't blind, only embraces. When the body finally rests, when the breath slows, it's like slipping back into the ocean after a long swim. No struggle, no separation, just homecoming. Maybe that's why so many people in their final moments describe seeing light or hearing familiar voices. Maybe it's not a vision at all. Maybe it's recognition. Maybe the soul is simply remembering its way back. And while we're still here, still breathing, still learning. Maybe the best thing we can do is live with that awareness. To treat each day as a small return, each act of kindness as a step closer to home. Because the truth is, you don't have to wait for death to feel that peace. You can find it now, in silence, in gratitude, in the way sunlight touches your skin. So take a deep breath. Feel that calm inside you. That's not something you create. It's something you uncover. It's who you've always been. And if this message speaks to something inside your heart, I'd love for you to stay, to subscribe, to walk with me through the next part of this journey. Together we'll keep exploring that quiet place inside us all, the one that whispers softly and surely, "You are home." There's a tenderness that comes when you finally stop searching, when you stop chasing answers and start listening to your breath, to your heartbeat, to that gentle hum of life moving through you. It's in those quiet moments you begin to understand. Everything you were ever looking for was never out there. It's been inside you all along. Maybe that's the greatest secret of life and death. They're not two separate things, but one continuous breath, one eternal rhythm. We spend so much of our lives trying to become someone, trying to fix, to prove, to control. But one day, something softens. You realize you don't have to hold the world together. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. The way a candle doesn't fight the dark, it simply shines. Maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he said enlightenment isn't something you reach. It's something you uncover. It's what remains when all the noise fades away. The light that's been quietly burning inside you from the very beginning. Death, then, isn't a thief, it's a teacher. It reminds us what matters. It strips away what's temporary so we can see what's real. When someone we love passes, we don't just lose them. We meet the truth of how fragile, how beautiful, how precious it all is. And in that realization, something inside us awakens. We begin to live with softer hearts, slower steps, deeper gratitude. We begin to love not because we have forever, but because we don't. Sometimes when I sit in silence, I imagine the soul is light, boundless, weightless, infinite. When a person dies, that light doesn't fade. It spreads. It becomes part of everything. It's in the laughter of a child, in the warmth of sunlight, in the stillness after rain. Maybe that's why we sometimes feel a sudden peace or an unexplainable comfort, as if someone we loved is near. Maybe they are, not in the way we used to see them, but in every way that truly matters. So perhaps the real purpose of this life isn't to escape death, but to understand it, to live so fully, so honestly, that when the final breath comes, it feels less like an ending and more like coming home to ourselves. Because what dies is only the body, the light remains. Always. And maybe that's what you and I are doing here, remembering that light together, through words, through silence, through the simple act of being. If this journey has touched something inside you, if it's brought even a little calm or clarity, I'd love for you to stay close. Subscribe, and let's keep walking this quiet path. One that doesn't promise all the answers, but does promise truth, presence, and peace. And before you go, take one last breath with me. Feel it enter, feel it leave. That's life. And in between those breaths is eternity. You are not separate from it. You are part of it. You always have been and you always will be.